Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving deep into one of humanity's oldest, most complex questions, really. War and peace.
Huge topic.
Yeah, is conflict just, part of being human, something
Yeah.
we have to keep doing, or is it actually a choice we make?
It's fundamental, isn't it?
It really is, and it echoes everywhere. History, philosophy, even sometimes pop culture. I was thinking about that quote, from the AI and war games.
Oh, yeah.
Facing nuclear war, it says, the only winning move is not to play. Simple, but it really sticks.
It does. It's deceptively simple, like you said. But there's a lot packed in there, isn't there? It kind of challenges all the usual thinking about conflict, about needing to win.
Exactly. Does winning through violence actually get us what we want?
Right. So that's sort of our mission for this deep dive, yeah. To explore both sides, the arguments against war, which are pretty powerful, and then the case for peace, which sometimes felt harder to grasp, maybe.
Definitely. We'll be drawing on history, philosophy, personal stories, lots of material you, our listener, shared. So let's unpack it.
Okay.
So, kicking off with maybe the toughest part.
Yeah.
Does war actually solve anything? I mean, some people see it as a necessary evil, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to fight.
Well, that's the conventional wisdom, maybe. But history often tells a different story. Pope John Paul II, he saw so much conflict. He said that wars generally don't resolve the problems for which they are fought, and therefore prove ultimately futile.
Futile. That word really hits hard when you think about the cost.
It does. And the human cost, the societal devastation, it's almost unimaginable.
Yeah, the numbers are just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Our sources mention between 1914 and 1945, 70 million people died in Europe alone from conflict. 70 million.
It's hard to even comprehend.
And it bleeds into everything. Karen Armstrong pointed out how even things like football can get infected by this violent ethos, riots, deaths.
Yeah.
Shows how deep it goes, way beyond the battlefield.
And literature captures this so powerfully. Think about Eric Maria Remarque's All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, yeah. Devastating book.
It really is. He shows how war just turns men into thugs, all their education, their background, irrelevant. The goal becomes just kill as many people as possible and to steal so that he can survive.
Just survival. Brutal.
Yeah. He talks about a generation destroyed by the war, even those of us who escaped its bullets. It breaks something inside.
And modern war seems even worse in some ways. The data shows the percentage of civilians, innocent people dying as collateral damage. It's gone up.
Increased over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tragically, so have the number of soldiers dying from friendly fire. It's just chaos. Indiscriminate.
And beyond the human tragedy, there's the economic drain, the sheer waste of resources. General Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, gave this incredible speech in 1953, the Cross of Iron speech.
Right, I know the one.
He put it so starkly. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft.
A theft.
A theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. And he wasn't just being poetic, he gave specifics.
What did he say?
He said, the cost of one modern heavy bomber is this: a modern brick school in more than 30 cities, 2 fine, fully equipped hospitals, or, some 50 miles of concrete highway.
Wow. When you put it like that, schools, hospitals, roads versus one bomber, the trade-off is just stark.
It's undeniable.
And maybe it's even darker than just wasted resources. Some sources suggest something pretty provocative, that war is profitable to some people.
That's a disturbing thought.
It is. It implies there's an incentive to create fear and hatred to get people fighting each other. It flips the script, doesn't it? From war as a last resort to war as potentially a business.
A manufactured crisis.
Exactly. There's even an alleged quote from George W. Bush in 2004 saying that basically U.S. economic growth had been based on the wars it waged.
Yeah.
Whether he said it exactly like that or not, the idea itself is unsettling.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it leads us straight into this whole area of deception and manipulation. Because if war is being pushed for reasons other than genuine defense, well, truth becomes a problem.
The first casualty, they say.
Pretty much. And we see patterns: presidents misleading the public, JFK on the Bay of Pigs, LBJ on the Gulf of Tonkin, which, escalated Vietnam massively, Nixon and Watergate eroding trust during a war. It happens again and again.
And sometimes the deception is planned, like way in advance. Those declassified Operation Northwoods documents from '62.
Chillin'.
Yeah, the CIA planning to stage fake terrorist attacks on U.S. soil against Americans, just to create a pretext to invade Cuba.
It's almost unbelievable, planning to harm your own people for a political goal.
And think about the '93 World Trade Center bombing.
Yeah.
The FBI apparently had an informant, someone who knew the bombing plans.
Right, and new.
But a supervisor reportedly fired the informant before the attack, then rehired him afterwards. It suggests information being actively suppressed, or at least ignored, with deadly consequences.
It paints a picture of how easily public opinion can be steered, often through fear. Hermann Göring, the Nazi Reich Marshal, was brutally honest about it at Nuremberg.
What did he say?
He basically laid out the playbook. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country.
Wow. Just lay out the formula, tell people they're under attack, call anyone arguing for peace unpatriotic. Simple and terrifyingly effective, it seems.
It does seem that way.
And the media can get caught up in it, or even used. There was that German editor, Dr. Udo Ulfkot.
Yes, I remember that.
He admitted planting stories written by the CIA, stories designed to push nations towards war.
Directly manipulating the narrative.
Yeah. And remember that fake beheading story back in 2003? Some people just made it up as an experiment to see how fast false information could spread online.
And it spread like wildfire, right?
Exactly. It shows how easily fake narratives take hold. And all this fear, this manipulation, it chips away at our freedoms too, doesn't it? Things like the Patriot Act, more surveillance.
Absolutely. Fear is used to justify curtailing liberties. Which brings us to another key point. How the very idea of a just war starts to crumble in the modern age.
Because of the scale of destruction.
Precisely. Especially after the invention of atomic weapons, that changed everything. Pope Pius XII looked at this new reality and said, essentially, that modern warfare's violence is so enormous it can no longer be regarded as a reasonable, proportionate means for settling conflicts. The potential destruction is just too vast.
It means overwhelm any possible just end.
Exactly. And Pope John the 23rd echoed this in Pacem in Terris. He said, flat out, therefore, in this age of ours, which prides itself on its atomic power, it is irrational to think that war is a proper way to obtain justice for violator rights.
Irrational. A strong word from a pope.
Very. It suggests that in a nuclear world, the old calculations just don't apply anymore. The risk is simply too high.
Okay, so if war is so devastating, so costly, often based on lies and maybe even irrational in the modern age, where does that leave peace? Is it just a nice idea, a dream, or is it actually, possible, practical?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? For so long, the assumption was, well, humans are just aggressive. Conflict is in our DNA.
Baked in.
Right, but then you have something like the Seville Statement on Violence. This was a group of scientists, experts, basically saying, hold on, peace is possible because war is not a biological necessity.
Not biological. So what is it?
They called it a social invention, like, marriage or writing or other things humans created.
Yeah.
And the key thing is, if we invented it.
We can uninvent it or invent something else.
Exactly. It shifts the whole perspective. It means peace isn't fighting against our nature. It's about changing our social structures and choices.
So how do we do that? What are the paths towards peace?
Well, one path that comes up, maybe surprisingly, is empathy. Real deep listening. Amaryllis Fox, who worked in CIA counterterrorism.
Okay, not someone you'd necessarily expect to talk about empathy.
Right. But she learned something profound out there. She said, everybody believes they are the good guy. Everyone.
Even the enemy.
Especially the enemy, from their perspective. And she argues, the only real way to disarm your enemy is to listen to them. Really listen. Because if you hear them out, you can see that more often than not, you might have made some of the same choices if you lived their life instead of yours.
That's challenging, to try and see the world from the perspective of someone you consider an enemy.
Deeply challenging. But Fox makes another key point. She says, if your enemy is a policy, however complicated, that we can work with.
So shift from demonizing the person to addressing the policy.
Exactly. If you can get past the evil enemy rhetoric and see the underlying issues, the policy disagreements, those, however complex, are things you can potentially negotiate, discuss, find solutions for. You can work with the policy. It's much harder to work with pure evil.
That makes sense. It reframes the problem.
Yeah.
What else? The sources talk about love and forgiveness too, right? In really extreme situations.
They do. Incredible stories like Jack Schwartz facing a Nazi guard. Instead of fear or hate, he looked the guard in the eye and just said, I love you, and meant it.
What happened?
The guard was just stunned, dropped his whip, ran away, Or Huang Yaorong in a life or death moment having this realization only love could end hatred. And I could choose love. These aren't just sentiments, they're actions that break the cycle.
Wow. Choosing love in the face of violence.
And it's not just modern anecdotes. Think about the Iliad, ancient Greece. Achilles and King Priam, sworn enemies, one killed the other's son.
Right. Intense hatred there.
Absolutely. But they end up weeping together over Hector's body, sharing their grief. And in that moment, they see each other differently, not as monsters, but as fellow humans suffering. They see something almost divine in each other.
A shared humanity overcoming the enmity.
Precisely. It's an ethos you find in, well, in all the major religions, too. This capacity to see beyond the conflict, to connect with the other. And it's not just ancient myth. The South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Powerful stuff came out of that.
Unbelievably powerful. There's a story of a woman whose family was murdered, burned by this man, Mr. Van den Broek.
Oh.
At the hearing, she doesn't ask for revenge.
What did she ask for?
She asks him to take her to where they buried the bodies so she can give them a proper burial. And then she asks him to visit her regularly so she can be a mother to him.
My goodness, that's radical forgiveness.
Yeah.
Beyond comprehension, almost.
It truly is. It's this profound act of choosing connection and healing over hatred and retribution. It echoes that insight drawn from the Jewish response to the Holocaust. Life is stronger than death. Love is stronger than hatred.
An affirmation of life and love, even after the absolute worst. So empathy, love, forgiveness. What about nonviolence as a strategy?
Crucial. Martin Luther King Jr. put it so clearly. Violence never brings permanent peace. It solves no social problem. It merely creates new and more complicated ones.
Creates more problems than it solves.
And he also said something profound. Only a courageous man can be nonviolent. It takes more courage, not less, to resist violence without resorting to it yourself.
That counters the idea that nonviolence is passive or weak.
Completely. Look at Gandhi, MLK. They faced incredible danger, immense pressure. They absolutely could have rode on the frenzy of the masses, could have channeled that anger into violence.
But they didn't.
They actively chose the path of nonviolence. They believed, like Gandhi said, that humility and simple truth are more powerful than empires. Their power was moral, not military.
And Oskar Schindler, too, right? His motivation.
So simple, so human. When asked why he risked everything, he basically said, if you saw a dog going to be crushed under a car, wouldn't you help him? It wasn't complex ideology, it was just basic human conscience, acting because it's the right thing to do.
Which connects to another principle, reciprocity. The golden rule, basically.
Yeah.
Confucius, do not do to others what you would not like them to do to you.
Simple yet profound. Imagine if nations actually operated that way.
A different world.
And Confucius saw this as a ripple effect, starting from within. He said, paraphrasing a bit, if you have righteousness in your heart, you'll have beauty in your character. Beauty in character leads to harmony in the home. Harmony at home leads to order in the nation, and order in the nation
leads to peace in the world.
Exactly. It's a path to global peace that starts with individual integrity and transformation. It connects the personal to the political.
It all ties together.
Which brings us to the sheer transformative power of acting for peace. And a really key quote here from Peter Lawrence, who wrote for the Thinking Sapiens. He says, when we react to violence with violence, good has not overcome evil. Evil has just succeeded in multiplying itself.
Let's pause on that. When you react to violence with violence, good has not overcome evil. Evil has just succeeded in multiplying itself. Yeah. That really cuts to the core of breaking these cycles, doesn't it?
It really does. Responding in kind just feeds the very thing you're trying to stop. It suggests we need a totally different way to think about winning.
And history sometimes shows this works better, practically speaking. Ron Paul made that observation about Vietnam.
Right. He said, essentially, we have accomplished much more in peace than we did in an enormously costly war. Trade, diplomacy, cultural exchange after the war ended arguably did more good than the fighting ever did.
Sometimes peace is just more effective.
It can be. And think about JFK during the Cold War. He talked about a strategy of peace, not weakness, a strategy. He said it labors on not toward a strategy of annihilation, but toward a strategy of peace.
Because the alternative was unthinkable.
Exactly. He pushed for disarmament, knowing full well that in a nuclear exchange, all we have built, all we have worked for would be destroyed in the first 24 hours. That stark reality underscores the wisdom in that War Games quote we started with.
The only winning move is not to play.
Yeah.
Wow. What a journey through these ideas. We've seen the awful costs of war human, economic, moral. The futility Pope John Paul II talked about, the lies, the manipulation.
It's a heavy picture.
It is.
Yeah.
But then we've also explored these incredibly powerful pathways to peace. Empathy, listening, radical forgiveness, love, courageous nonviolence, the golden rule. Things that feel almost counterintuitive sometimes, but might be the only real way forward.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway, I think, is that peace isn't passive. It's not just hoping war doesn't happen. It's an active choice. It takes courage, requires empathy, demands a commitment to truth, even when it's hard. It means really trying to understand and connect with the other.
It's a different kind of strength, a different strategy for winning, maybe.
I think so.
So as we wrap up, maybe the question for you, the listener, is, what does all this mean for your choices? When you face conflict, big or small, global or personal, how might you choose to not play the same old game? What could a different kind of winning look like in your life? Something to think about.